Hi everyone, my name is Oleg and welcome back to the Knockout Data Insights channel. I recently launched this channel with my friend Kalina and we are covering all aspects of data analytics in this channel, and we're posting videos about data visualizations and tools such as Power BI and Python and AI. But it's not just about the technical side of things. I also want to explore the core fundamentals of data analytics, including the non-technical aspects that are critical to providing good insights. Throughout my career in analytics, the tools I've used constantly changed, but the methods and approaches to finding insights did not change as much. So I'd like to start a series of short videos called Data Analysis Fundamentals. And in this first episode, I would like to cover one of my favorite methods for finding insights, which is using correlations to make predictions of the future. So let's get into it. So given that we have the US presidential election tomorrow, I'm going to use that as a real world example and see if we can predict the winner with some confidence. And why do I like correlations so much? Well, there's two reasons. Predictive analytics can be very difficult, but we can make it a lot easier if we identify variables that are truly impactful to each other. And that's where correlations come into play. And the other one is practicality. It's sort of a quick and dirty way to understand a topic and even predict the future with reasonable accuracy. As a data analyst, you will often have to work with incomplete data or time constraints. So theoretically, you can collect and analyze every piece of data, but it's just not very efficient or practical in the real world. So we can use this to solve that problem. Before we begin, just wanted to give a quick recap. Correlation analysis, it's a statistical method, and it's used to measure the strength and direction of a relationship between two variables. So in other terms, how things are connected. And there's different ways to measure correlations, but one method is to use a correlation coefficient formula, which will give you a value between 1, which is a perfect correlation, and -1, which is a inverse perfect correlation. Using a hypothetical example, let's say you have a cafe that sells ice cream, hot tea, and sandwiches. This data shows that the graph on the left shows that ice cream sales tend to go up when it's hotter during the summer months. Hot tea sales go down when it's hot in the summer months. And then with sandwiches, there's no strong correlation because people buy those year round. So we have a positive correlation coefficient, a negative, and one that's negative, but it's close to zero. So it's not enough evidence there that the two factors are correlated. So that was a simple example, but can we do something like this with US presidential elections? Can we predict the winner? And different factors can affect people's election choices. They could be choosing the candidates for the social and human rights issues, for their foreign policy, for how they're going to improve the economy, or what they're going to do for the environment, or just based on their character. How do you account for so many variables? Well, you don't necessarily have to, especially when we're limited to two choices. So hypothetically, again, let's say we have candidate 1 who is very environmentally friendly, and then candidate 2 who's very passionate about social issues. And then these 3 voters on the left, who are they going to vote for? So Mary, for her, the number 1 issue is climate change. So there's a good chance she'll vote for candidate 1 because that's also something he promises to improve. And then Carlos, he's passionate about social issues, which aligns well with candidate 2. So we can also assume that he will vote for him. It's not a guarantee, but it makes sense. What about the third voter, Kim? For her, the economy is by far the most important factor, but they're both claiming they're going to improve the economy. So we're not really sure who she's likely to lean at. And that's a common thread, the economy topic, with all elections and all candidates pretty much. They're never going to not talk about it. it's a topic, an issue that's important for a lot of voters. You don't have to get 100% of the votes. You just have to get the majority. So, and the majority do care about the economy. So we can use that as a predictive indicator. So let's test it out. So how can we test the economic performance? Well, we can use the stock market. It's not the economy, but it is similar. The stock market performance reflects corporate profits. So if they're doing well, um, those businesses are hiring more. So there's just more money, and also affects consumer wealth. People have more to spend, and also retirement accounts. A lot of people are directly invested in the market. Even when they're not actively trading, they might have retirement accounts, 401ks. So when the market's going up, they should at least be happy because their retirement savings are also going up. And it's also a sign of investor confidence. So when the market's going up, you can say, yeah, things are going well. And presidents often talk about it. When things are going well, they will mention it. Just a few quotes here, for example. The last four presidents, regardless of the party, if things are going well, they'll mention it. And, while some may boast about it more than others, it's pretty much always the case where, that they are going to talk about it when the market's going up. So now we're going to test it. We're going to test if the S&P 500 index correlates with the outcome of the incumbent party candidate. So in this case, the incumbent candidate would be Kamala Harris because she's a Democrat and Joe Biden's a Democrat, who's the current president. And I tested the data for the last 40 years using the stock market performance of 12 months prior to election up until October 31st. And then the other thing I'm testing is the correlation coefficient. So I'm not just checking if the candidate won or not. I'm also checking how much the market was up during that time to see if there's it's more of a weighted measure compared to the first method here. So this is our first result. This is when you look at 12 months of data. So the market growth and result of the election turned out to be correct 67% of the time. So you can see Bill Clinton, Obama, George Bush Sr., they all won when the market was up. And then John McCain, who's an outlier at the bottom, lost. His party lost because the market was doing really bad during that time. And then a few are wrong. So, but overall, it's a positive correlation, and the coefficient also of 0.5 shows it as a moderate strength correlation. So I think this is pretty good, but we can also look at it in a shorter time frame because one benefit of looking at a shorter time frame is the S&P 500 itself. The more of a time you look at, the more likely you're gonna have it be up. If you look at 3-4 years at a time, it'll be difficult to find where it's still down. But shorter time frames, yeah, it's not so simple. So let's say 6 months prior to the election. So now we're closer to the election. Well, the results improved a little bit. So now we're correct 78% of the time, but the coefficient did go down a bit because you see Donald Trump in 2020 lost, even though the market was up double digits for him. So we can use this. Either way, they both show a positive trend. But let's say we want to get even closer to the election, so 3 months prior to that. So, and in my opinion, this is probably the most relevant because, things that happened a long time ago might not be as relevant to the voter as what's happening today. And here are the results. It actually had a direct 100% correlation between the candidate winning and the market being up, and the candidate losing and the market being down. You see, and then for Kamala Harris, she's kind of in the middle there, but we don't know what will happen. But I think these graphs, this data, in my opinion, is a positive sign for her. So to summarize, the there is historical stock market performance that suggests that she will win tomorrow. Now, you can always poke holes in this method, but as an analyst, you sometimes have to make assumptions and provide recommendations based on these assumptions, especially when there's no reliable data to work with. Like if you look at major polls, for example, on the right, it shows that they have no idea who will win. You can see that the average of the polls is dead even at 48.5% for both Trump and Harris. And most of these polls have a margin of error that's bigger than the spread that they are reporting. So they're not sure. So I think it makes sense to at least consider the stock market performance in a situation like this. Yeah. So that's all I wanted to share today. It's a fairly simple example, and we can always make it more complex with more data. But I wanted to highlight an example that's easy to understand. Correlations, they're very useful in predictive analytics, but it's also important to note that correlation doesn't imply causation. So, two variables being correlated doesn't always mean it causes the other. But it is very valuable, and especially we can use it in our jobs. So while we can't analyze presidential elections in most of our jobs, we can take a similar approach. For example, when you analyze sales data, a potential customer makes purchasing decisions just like the voter. They can buy the product, they can buy the competitor's product, or they cannot buy at all. Just like with voting, they cannot vote or vote for one of the candidates. And you can find out the key driving factor that leads them to make their purchasing decision using correlation analysis. There's many ways to use it. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you for watching, and see you next time. Bye.